Hi, my name is Werner Schimek, so I'm coming from Communify, a software vendor of UCaaS platforms that we sell to service providers to enable the enterprise communication. As you can hear, I'm from the heart of Europe, so thanks for welcoming me with snow here today. I guess it was not that fun for you, but I enjoy it very much.
You're live.
Yeah, hi. Ilyan Khafuzov, don't bother remembering the name, it's impossible.
That's my challenge, Ilyan, you know.
Yeah, just Ilyan is fine. It's
Yeah,
like
Ilyan's got it.
billion, trillion, it's easy. Ilyan Khafuzov, I'm the regional VP of International Sales for 2600 Hertz. And I'm former BroadSoft. I think this still resonates with a lot of people in the audience. And in terms of platform, it's all-in-one platform that does UCaaS, CCaaS, and CPaaS. And since I mentioned BroadSoft, it's probably the only platform that can really fill the shoes of BroadWorks, if I can say it quite, confidently.
Thanks, Ilyan. Simon?
Hi everybody, my name's Simon Horton. I'm the VP of International Sales for Sangoma. And I think myself and Alberto are a little bit different up here because we don't sell a platform to you guys out in the room. We operate our own platform as Sangoma and sell it through the channel. So a little bit of a different situation. I think we can provide a bit of a different perspective because of that.
Yeah, hi everybody, this is Alberto. I work in Walix as a Chief Sales Officer, and you actually stole my line about the weather, so I need to come up with another icebreaker. But no, jokes aside, as you can imagine, my impeccable accent, I'm from Italy, and we do provide unified communication as a service at 360 degree. We're 100% channel-based company from a business model standpoint, which is one of the key differentiator for us. And we operate in EMEA, APAC, and North America in general, LATAM as well.
Excellent.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. So, as I said with the panel earlier, Dom has done all the preparatory work for this and prepared the questions, which I'm going to ignore. So, first of all, would you agree, and I think from a sort of platform perspective, and again, Sangoma coming at this from a slightly different angle, the options, because of sort of consolidation with the industry, are diminishing for service providers and telcos in terms of how many options are out there for them to take. Would you agree, first of all, that that's the case?
Absolutely. So what we see is a trend that service providers are looking for self-hosting again. Because in the past it was just, we don't want to have to do anything with UCaaS because it's too complicated. It's not our core business. They just wanted to sell minutes. They just wanted to sell trunks. But what they see now is that just being reduced to a big pipe provider is not enough. So the ARPU is going down, so they have to do something about it. And we saw this trend not just by very specific service providers that are filling a specific niche, but also for multinationals that I'm working with in my role as sales director for Middle East. We see a lot of international affiliates that we have 20, 30 even, that are saying, we have countries where it's simply not allowed to go to a cloud. So we have to get the control back to us. We are experts in what we do in broadband, which is an essential part for delivering the experience. Because if the bandwidth is crap like in Germany, then you have, in some parts of
yes,
at least,
of
in some parts at least, we have a problem in delivering video conferencing. That's a simple part. So what we need is we have to combine it with other services that we offer out of our service provider portfolio and make the UCaaS platform as the centerpiece of the ARPU puzzle, what we call it. And we see the trend of going back. And I would also say that that is true, that there are not many platforms in the market that are carrier grade, that are multi-tenant, that are reseller capable, that allows you to brand everything. And I'm talking about everything down to the app, where we not just have a co-branding that we see so much in the industry, but really your own app with your own style, your own naming and everything. So this is what we do, and also we are considered, and we are focusing into the Central European markets quite well, as one of the platforms that can replace the BroadSoft platform. This is what we did, for instance, in Turkey at Turkcell, where we did this very successfully. And
we'll come on to the differentiation point in a bit more detail in a minute. Ilyan, from 2600 hertz, it's a slightly different approach, effectively, because it's more from the developer side of things. Would you agree with that? And what are the, and then to my point about platform options available to service providers and telcos.
So if I take it a little bit outside of
Feel free.
2600 hertz. So back in 2000, like the end of the 1990s, and then the early 2000, when the VoIP started to exist, and all these platforms had many names over the years. So you all remember IP-centrics, and then soft switches, and hosted PBX. When I joined BroadSoft, that was the moniker. The UC came later. And this was basically the ways for the service providers to offer telephony, expanded business telephony. And there were many options on the market, and then over time, BroadSoft became more and more dominant, and at some point took pretty much everything. I mean,
really big market share. Yeah, absolutely.
Huge market share. We work with pretty much every tier 1, tier 2 operator. Teles at the time, they had some successes here and there, and some other companies. Metaswitch was breathing in our necks all the time. But at some point, BroadSoft really encapsulated the whole market. And when Cisco bought it and did its best to kind of get out of this market, which they continue going strong these days, and Meta was quite fast after this were acquired by Microsoft. There are not many options on the market. There are many companies, and many of them present here, like RingCentral and Microsoft Teams and so forth. But this is more collaboration software, Teams, Zoom, etc. And it's a different mindset. The way operators expect to buy platform, to white label it, it doesn't matter if it's in their data center or in the cloud, but they own it, they shape it, and they sell it as their own product, and they derive most of the value versus commissions, like some of the other cloud providers these days push as a business model. It's something that is still there, because the telephony, I had chats with some of the companies here, talking about market shares of different companies, and I heard some pretty, outlandish claims of how many seats, who has so, and so on.
They better not come from my presentation, because they were not outlandish, but...
Well, I'm saying for my personal conversations.
Yeah,
but the reality is, if you look at telephony, just business telephony, and the so-called hosted PBX functionalities, this traditional service providers continue to have 95% market share. Everything else is like a small, it's a seagull landed on top of an iceberg. It's not even the beginning of the iceberg. And operators really need something that will allow them to replicate their historical models. And at 2600 hertz, that's my only sales part of this sentence. We are trying to replicate the old business model of BroadSoft as much as we can. And
I think that's a very valid explanation of the history of the platform market, though. So I think that's a valid point. Simon, from Sangoma's, it is, as you said, a slightly different perspective, but you've obviously seen the platform options diminish from a competitive standpoint, in terms of the number anyway, maybe not the...
Yeah, for sure. I mean, from a channel and partnership perspective, we see a lot of resellers and agents who want something different. They want to offer something different. They don't want to be one of 10 people in the city of Bristol offering maybe the same kind of platform, and they're all just competing on price with each other. So it's a race to the bottom. So we like to offer something that's a little bit different and isn't kind of commoditized to that degree. But then if you look at it geographically, in the US, we see the agent model being very prevalent. In Germany, that hardly exists, and I feel like we're maybe at the start of that curve in the UK. So we like to offer choice at Sangoma, and we'll get into that maybe a little bit later. That we have, it's all about choice and making sure that the end user and the channel can pick the product and the sales methodology that suits them the best.
Okay. Alberto, from the Wildix point of view, obviously real traction that you've gained in Europe, looking at the US now.
Yeah, absolutely.
I suppose that coincides with the general sort of contraction of the...
Absolutely. I think there are a couple of points I'd like to share here. First of all, I completely agree with Simon's point, but I'll get back in a second. From a competition standpoint and differentiator standpoint, we share with our partners something that is, I mean, I don't want to sugarcoating anything. So we usually speak really truly and directly to our partners. We told them literally like a couple of months ago at our summit that within 1 to 3 years, that's gonna be your last PBX you're gonna sell. So, and the reason is pretty simple. We reached a certain level where differentiator from a feature perspective is no longer really doable. Even if it takes like 1 month or 2 months of soft engineering jobs to do it the same for other companies. So at the end of the day, and then maybe we can discuss in the next question.
Carry on with that. Take that differentiation.
At the end of the day, we no longer can win, service providers can no longer win as before, at least through feature. So we have different options that are completely out of the scope from a product perspective, which is ironic because we're selling this product. But the proximity of the services and the support these service providers of ours are doing towards their end users are second to none. So this is the really value added point that service providers can share and showcase to their clients. And at other points that basically will encourage them to have this kind of holistic platform where the solution, the real integration, the real innovation of any solution, not only Wildix, is into the synchronization, the integration with other things, so that it's a one-stop shop. Coming back to Simon's point, I think the main differences from a regional perspective is not about the needs of end users, but rather the business model of how these end users usually they're used to buy. Which means, again, coming back to Simon's point, in the US, they're simply used to deal with agents, something that is probably the furthest point from in Germany. And so a vendor and the tech service provider, if they want to expand from an international standpoint, or if they're already into this, they need to adapt to the market. But it's not necessarily almost at all from an end user change their needs based on the countries, but rather the way they buy, the way they get in touch with you from a sales perspective. So we need to adapt.
The customer requirement from a geographical standpoint differs, but marginally, but the go-to-market consumption approach differs much more dramatically per market. So, and the point you made on differentiation, that's going to be the next question across the board. But so you generally, in terms of feature and function, we've reached a sort of ubiquity across the board that it's very difficult to differentiate your offer from someone else's based on feature function.
Yeah, what we're trying to do in order to win competition and bringing as much margins as possible for our tech service providers is, as I mentioned, the service and support they can do. This is something we really are eager of because we tend to bring on board partners that are, logistically speaking, really close to their own clients, whether if it's local or international. Another point we're trying to do from a product perspective is differentiating our own solutions from a vertical perspective. The last thing, and we're trying to hear from our market as much as we can. Just to give an example, one of our really last product we released, it's called X-Hoppers. And basically, it's been born thanks to a feedback we received from some clients of ours through our partners. So we actually built a solution thanks to the feedback of one of our clients. And by doing this, you basically position yourself and your solution, specializing yourself into a vertical. So you look like you are a subject matter expert.
So that way of differentiating was the development reaction speed. So
yeah,
difficult to differentiate your platform from other platforms, feature and function wise?
Actually, not really. What I see here is that every market has different needs. So from feature perspective, but also when we speak about the German-speaking countries. I mean, there is a reason why Germany is the last on the UCAS adoption rate on the slide before that we've seen. So the reason is they have been pampered by ISDN, by the features, the traditional PBXs, where they got features nobody else on the planet got. And I'm speaking here from experience in the German-speaking countries, which is our, let's say, core business and core segment here, which differs a lot from US, UK, Canada, and other markets. So what we see as differentiation is that we are coming from a service provider angle. So we started our development with the needs of real service providers nearly 20 years ago. So we all know their fear, we all know their requirements that we have, not only stability and everything, but also when it comes to when there is a lot of local PBX installed, and phoning is what they really like in Germany. Trust me on this one. So what we've seen in the presentation before, Germany, well, they love phoning. So they have a lot of systems that we cannot just, as a big bang, bring to the cloud. So integration part is the key here. And you need trunking integration with the existing things that you have there. Maybe you can take over some existing assets that you have there from Unify or name them, from the traditional PBX vendors. Also, I want to add something to the way of selling. This is exactly true for Germany, because many of the so-called Mittelstand, so the medium-sized enterprises, they are served through system integrators that are locally near to the company and that understand their requirements, because they are especially targeting verticals like lawyers, like banks, and so on. So we need to enable them, and when you think before what they did, they were just selling and integrating traditional communication solutions, like name them, Avaya, whatever, So now they have a problem, as you've seen what's happening in the industry right now. They are losing their business base. So we step in there as a vendor and say, look, we can give you this platform. You can build a solution that is in the cloud hosted by yourself if you want to have full flexibility, or even as a white label hosting by us. But you can build a solution around it. So you can be still the trustworthy integrator that knows exactly the needs of your customers. Integrate for specific areas like elderly care, like municipalities that are totally different to the UK. For instance, when the way of dialing, the way of data protection is implemented, because everything must be regulated on rules in Germany. So platforms have to reflect that. And this is very important that the UCaaS system that you are using as a provider can reflect that local things and allows you to integrate with existing things that you can do stepwise migrations to the cloud.
So is that proximity expertise in Germany? Ilian, from a 2600 hertz perspective, differentiating?
I will voice a little bit disagreement, and Alberto, please don't.
Be my guest.
Yes, when we talk about historical voice features, and yes, everything's invented. I mean, in BroadSoft we had this around 2006. All the features that Etsy ever created were already existed, and there's nothing new. But it always reminds me. I've seen a documentary about a session around the beginning of 20th century, and there was the World Expo in France, I think, and they were talking that that's the end of history, right? We invented everything, we have electricity, we have internal combustion engine, that's it. There's nothing else to invent. So we live in the same time right now. With AI, just a few simple use cases of AI. Automatic translation to different language, not just language, to a local dialect, chosen applicable local dialect that can be automatically. I live in Germany as well, by the way, in Bavaria. People there speak something that probably a lot of people will not consider proper German. So you may speak with somebody in another part and say, okay, you don't even do it, but automatically it will adjust to the accent of the other person so you understand each other perfectly. Or automatic in negotiations over the phone, automatically creating a sort of commitment document or a contract based on verbal commitments you do during the call. So there's so many things, like it's just like the tip of the iceberg.
So rather than specific feature function, it's sort of the depth in capability within the transcription.
Exactly,
or
because
the-
it boils down to what is the real business case. Werner gave example with some features like Astra. Before Mytel, they created a lot of specific features just for Switzerland, just for Germany, and yes, they exist. But what's the point of having these features? There's some business use, and there's so many things that can be created, and we've seen with video a lot of advancement in the last few years, like things we felt 5 years ago impossible, the backgrounds and this, like put your sunglasses and whatever, real-time effects, very convincingly, and the same way there could be tons of things done. So it's very the beginning of complete change of what we'll be doing, and yeah.
So it's potentially use of those sort of emerging technologies to differentiate. From the Sangoma side?
Well, I talked about choice earlier, and I'm about to say something. I've known Matt.
I think I know what this is gonna
I've
be.
known Matt for 15 years, and I've been to lots of these events, and I feel like after what I'm about to say, he may not invite me back. So Sangoma, we're about choice, and there are multiple ways of deploying UC. Yeah, you saw this coming, Patrick.
Premises-based, potentially.
So you can take our platform and you can deploy it in the cloud. You can consume it as UCaaS. You can deploy it on-prem. You can deploy it as software in your own data center. And so I find that really interesting. There are segments of the market, even in the UK, where the penetration is relatively high versus other European countries, there are still segments of the market we see who demand on-prem or demand software running in their own data center where they have control. So I think from a sales perspective and a channel perspective, we shouldn't force a particular deployment method down the throats of the channel and the end users. We have to be kind of trusted advisors and speak to, share our expertise with the end user and the channel to deploy in the way that they want.
Well, I mean, as much as this is called the CloudCom Summit, Cavell's numbers focus mainly on cloud-enabled UC. Our enterprise research, 6% of organizations said they would never move some systems to the cloud. So there is always, even though we're forecasting huge penetration, at the moment anyway, a significant, 6% proportion of businesses foresee that an amount of workload will always stay.
I saw some numbers that the UC market in Europe is worth $8 billion, and 12% of that is on-prem. So $1 billion is, for me, quite a big market to go after.
Yeah, no, that's a very valid point. And I did wonder whether you were going to go to the
I had to
differentiate. No, but it worked perfectly because we got all the different options across the board. So in terms of, that's how the platforms are differentiated. We talked about sort of dwindling numbers of platforms, how they're differentiated. From a service provider perspective, and all the service providers that three of you and your channel partner, who you work with, where are you seeing them drive the most revenue? And you've already mentioned examples of where in the differentiation, and Alberto, you mentioned service and support element. And Werner, I'll come to you first on this. Where do you see service providers driving the most value in conjunction with your platform?
That's actually a very interesting question, because in former days, you tried to sell UCaaS platforms to fixed line operators, right? But a lot of consolidation went on in the market in the last years. So the fixed line operators got bought by the mobile operators. And when you look at the sheer numbers, what they are doing per month, of course the mobile is by far exceeding the revenues of the fixed line in terms of numbers, in terms of revenues in general. So the mobile network becomes always more important. And also when we look at the Gen Z, they love to have the mobile phones, and I also have 2 kids in the same range of age, so I know exactly what you're talking about, and it's sometimes talking to a stranger at the end, but we understand it. So mobile is the part. So when we look at service providers, then what we see where the revenue is coming from, and we see that in our examples that we have in Magenta, for instance, with a service that I guess is telling by the name what it should be, an all-in communication, which is basically UC at its best. Why? Because FMC, it was brought from Microsoft as the new thing. It isn't. We're doing this since 10 years successful in Austria. where we tie into the mobile core, where we bring, I mean, it's a wrong example. I didn't have a Nokia 3310. You know, these phones with only the buttons that we turn into an extension of a UC system. So this is basically what we're doing there. And this is the driver, what I see. So it's not just having a super fancy, I don't know, web interface on WebRTC. Of course, this is something we need for the younger generation, but we need to give them a choice. We need to address all the demographics in the workforce. If somebody prefers a physical phone, sure, let's have them this. If they want to have a fancy video conference, fine, let's do a WebRTC client, for instance, top notch. Or if they just want to not get into the trouble with CarPlay in the cars, and I mean, you know, when the display is black in the electric car, for instance, you cannot do anything. It's not our fault by the application vendor, but it's just the car that doesn't do what we want. So, but bringing it down to a mobile integration where you can just use your phone to make a phone call in your enterprise. I mean, this is real choice. This is all-in communication, for instance. This is UC as we see it. And when switching between the devices, this should be a seamless, painful experience. So even when you start something on your mobile phone on the way to work in your car, because you have to go to work, right, to save the cost of living, or sometimes it's getting, I mean, the ceiling is falling on your head, so you have to do something. So, I mean, pandemic was a nightmare, and especially when you are living in a small apartment, having 2 kids. I mean, it will change, you know. When you will have kids, I'm pretty sure that you try to work
Now we're
from
getting
home.
back into
But anyway,
which generation feels most sorry for itself.
No, but what I'm saying is moving between devices, moving to the experience of a unified communication is the key. And mobile integration, I see, is a very, very important stuff here.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think mobility has been a sort of theme of the conference today. Simon, I was going to come next to you on that in terms of differentiating for channel. Where are they driving the revenue, the margin?
Yeah, what we see is that the channel want to buy more service from a single vendor. So
research says exactly the same thing.
Yeah, we're layering, you know, on top of UCAS, which I think people have said, and I agree with, is kind of the centerpiece. But around that, you can add CCAS, CPaaS. In the US, we have internet access, so the actual, you know, fibers in the ground, unified threat management, SD-WAN on top of that. And I haven't heard SD-WAN actually today, which is unusual because that's normally one of the buzzwords. So
our networking analyst has the keynote in not very long, so
yeah, we see that channel and end users want a single bill, a single hand to shake or throat to choke, whichever you want to do, negative or positive, and kind of that's how we see the industry going. So we're building out a range of services that can be consumed very easily with one identity across the channel and end users.
Got you. So mobility, wider areas of the stack. Ilian, as what from?
I want to pass to Alberto.
Oh, wow, I mean, you've been...
I don't feel...
You're going to drop the mic at the end, or?
Yeah,
I'm just... No,
That's all right. That's all right. Thanks so much. So yeah, apart from what my fellow panelists have shared, and on top of what I already shared before, such as, you know, differentiator and being from a proximity perspective, the point of contact for your end users, and that's the way you can margin out of it. I think there are a couple of things that can be interesting. The first one is like the positioning of the tech service provider and the solutions we share. So in this case, specific case, we are specializing now into sales communication as a platform. So basically allowing end users to be more productive and efficient when it comes to selling. So really tied to not only saving costs, but also making revenue. And that's basically a positive domino effect for the tech service provider. The second thing is, and this is something a bit counterproductive in the vendor's mind, like sometimes, especially now that, you know, this industry is getting saturated and there's a price war, it's harder and harder to justify the value and ask for a premium price, which we do, but that's another story. It's pointless to complain as a vendor to say, oh, these tech service providers are focusing on security, so talking about margins and extra revenue you can get. There's no point for any vendor to say, no, you need to deal with my solution no matter the other business. you guys have had your own fair and strategic decisions into betting specifically or mainly on a certain industry or vertical or technology. The job of the vendors, no matter in which rank they end up with, is allowing their solutions and therefore our solution into other technology spaces throughout the integration. So that it's a no-brainer for the tech service provider. Okay, I'm focusing on security, but then the unified communication comes along perfectly with my own solution. So this is something that will allow and empower tech service provider to make even more margins and even more revenue by having a solution that is completely integrated with the other technology space they're dealing with.
Okay, understood. Ilian, last word to you on that.
All right, thanks. So from my perspective, service providers lost a little bit of edge lately because of all the over-top players, and they want to get back into the winning game. And this is owning the market, owning the relationship with the customers. I think at the end we were too hung up on we don't want to be a dumb pipe, we don't want to just resell, we want to be active player and shape the interest of what our customers are getting. The reality at the end of the day is we want to own the relationship with the customer. We want to make sure this customer pays a certain amount of money every month. Is it for dumb pipe services? Is it for crazy security products or whatever? It doesn't really matter at the end of the day. So it's important, every platform right now that wants to have really a competitive situation should enable the operators to retake this lost market share. And that's what we're trying to do.
Great. Some really great insight from all of the panelists there. So round of applause for all of our panelists listening to
Thank you, everybody.
Werner from Communify.